Yes, you wonder what all the fuss is about. The fuss today is about framing your subject. I've got a whole ton of ideas that you can implement right away. I've got some mistakes for you that I've made with a couple of examples, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what framing is. Last week, I talked to you guys about different ways to get variety in your shots when you're doing a session, and the last point was framing your subject. You all right, Lily? So framing your subject is something that's super, super important. It gives you an overall feel to your composition, and it can act as a way to lead your viewer into the frame or into the picture, looking in towards your subject. It's something that's already there. So you arrive at a scene and you can visually see something. So for example, in this scene here over in Bruges, when we photographed the gorgeous Nucci here, I could see this gorgeous archway, and I actually saw this archway before I saw him, and I knew that was going to be a really cool place to shoot a dog. And I didn't have a dog well, we had Poppy with us actually at the time, but you know, she'd had plenty of pictures that day, and we'd gone and had a look in this little boutique, and I'd spotted this gorgeous grey dog underneath the counter, this little American Jack Russell. And I said to the owner, "Oh my gosh, please, can I take your dog out for a picture?" And I showed him some of the pictures in my portfolio, and I thought he's going to think I'm a little bit mental, but you know, I might as well ask. Don't ask, you don't get, right? And he agreed. So we trundled off with Nucci in tow, and that was how this picture came about. So I had him on the top of the steps with this big doorway behind, and then having him just right in the middle. Now, when you're doing framing, it can be really tricky to try and get your subject, you know, composed right, but that is really important, and that's something that I'll talk to you a little bit later on as well, about something that, like, I often find when I'm in the moment, I'm like clicking away, and you know, the dog, because they're not models, they're not going to stay there. Sometimes they'll like shuffle off to the side of the frame, like all the shots of this photo, you know, oh, do you know what? I'm not showing my frame. I'm an idiot. I've just realised I'm waffling on, and all you can see is my face. Good job I chopped this down for YouTube, isn't it? Let's start this again, shall we? Right, let's go back. Let's go back to the very beginning. The very best place to start. And let's share my screen. Yay, framing, frame your subject. So you can see here, gorgeous little Mickey has got that halo around him. It's drawing the viewer's attention into that picture. Into the subject, which is his gorgeous little face peering down. It highlights him basically. I think this one almost looks like a halo. Katie came up yesterday from Adventure Portraits for a little bit of coaching, and she said, "Oh, you know, you're very technical. You know, you get the techie stuff." And I was saying to her, "I'm not really very technical. I'm just winging it." I think I'm very clicky. Just figure things out and wing it. Anyway, here we are. We have gorgeous Mickey. And now we have the gorgeous Nucci, who I photographed over in Bruges a couple of years ago. So, as I was saying before, he's framed beautifully by this big, big doorway. It draws that little bit of interest, brings your eye into him. And that is exactly what framing is supposed to do. It's finding something that's already there. So that archway is already there, the doorway is already there, and you're placing your subject within that frame. It doesn't have to be a doorway, it can be like window, foliage, we'll get onto all that later, you know, it can be lots of different things, but you're looking in your scene for something that's going to give like some more depth to the picture, and a little bit of interest as well. You just kind of, you know, guiding your viewer's eye through the scene. The frame doesn't have to go all the way around either, so like in this case, he's just at the frame's just at the bottom. He's sat on this rock, and the W that's created in this rock formation is essentially framing the bottom of him. So the frame can go all the way around, or it can just partially cover the subject. And make sure that you haven't got the frame competing with the subject as well. So sometimes if you don't create that space, it can like be a little bit like, oh, what am I supposed to be looking at? Am I supposed to be looking at this like gorgeous rock formation, or am I supposed to be looking at the dog? You can do that with depth of field or spacing, or just make sure that it's clear that the subject, the dog, is the main thing, and the frame around that isn't interfering with them too much. Excellent. Ross Campbell Pet Photography says, ha ha ha, we love the chaos. I mean, that's what you come here for, basically. Like, what's going to go crazy on this week's live? because there's always something. It's a guarantee. Right, let's have a look at some of the blunders that I've made then. The biggest thing I think for me is oftentimes this one just down here at the bottom, not getting enough contrast. So here I've chosen a black dog, and he's framed in this little, it's like a wooden teepee. You know when kids make teepees in the forest, you get a lot of them in the woods around there. Lily, I'm going to put you down because you clearly want to go out. There you go, sweetheart. I think maybe there's some food in the kitchen. Hang on, let me let her out. She sits on my knee all the time, you know, when I'm editing, curls up, or sometimes I put her in my jumper and she curls up. But there's obviously something far more interesting out there, so she's gone. Yeah, so not using enough contrast. This shot, because the background's so dark and the dog's so dark and the frame's so dark, it kind of all blends into one, and that framing that I could see with my eyes has been lost a little bit. So I mean, I could fix that by putting a light behind the dog, by editing the dog so it's lighter than the subject, or putting like a focus light on the dog when I'm shooting. Or you can just look for frames that, I could use, I mean, you can't, most of the time when you're shooting, you can't choose the colour of your dog. And if you're doing a private commission, if you want to shoot a particular frame and you can choose your model, then I would choose a lighter dog for this subject. But, you know, I still thought it was pretty cute, so I kept it in my show. This one at the top here, lack of separation. So there's too much going on. It's very busy. I was very taken with this temple in Bali. And sometimes it's very easy to get distracted by everything that's going on. Like, oh, I want to get everything in the picture. And my idea here was to use these pillars just here and just here to frame the dog. But I don't think the depth of field is shallow enough for that to really come across. And these actually end up becoming more distracting than framing. So something to watch out for. Make sure they're not too small in the frame, like these guys over here. They're a little bit lost in the frame. Now, that's not to say you can't use a small subject within the frame. Sometimes that can actually be really nice if you've got like this really cool, well, like here, if you had like a really cool archway and then they're perfectly centered and highlighted, but they look a little lost in this because they're not quite perfectly central. And they're, you know, there's not enough contrast between them and the background. They're kind of looking off. You know, there's a few things that just mean it kind of falls apart as a composition. So make sure that the frame is adding to and not taking away from the picture. This one down here, I actually shot quite recently, I think last week. And can you see here how it's just slightly off center? This is framed within the doorway, and again, when you're using framing that has an exact center point like that, you know, you really have to get it bob on, and this isn't very forgiving because there wasn't a lot of space. So I'm gonna have to actually move this along just a little bit so that I'm evening up that gap in Photoshop. But ideally, you know, we'd want him to be placed in the middle, or the chair to be placed in the middle, and he's in a good spot actually. You can see he's just right in front of this doorway, but the chair just needs coming over a little bit. So like move your angle around a little bit, or move the subject or the prop, whatever it is you're using. Make sure your centralization's there. What can you do now? I've got some ideas for you. Doorways are probably my favorite and a really easy go-to, especially when you've got really decorative doorways like this. This was in Prague, this little, well, I say little dog, it's a big dog called Bublina. And I knew this, I wanted to do the shot outside this door. I knew it would look fabulous. It was actually really busy. There was people coming, going, and everybody wanting to take an Instagram snap there. So we really had to just bide our time and wait for a little bit of a clearing to get that moment. And I can remember when I was taking this shot, just really focusing on getting her exactly in the middle so that the pillar's coming right between her eyes and she's perfectly centered in the door, and that balances out really nicely, as opposed to that one we were looking at before when it was a little bit off. So that's how to do it. And again, this is that doorway we were looking at before. This is the exact doorway, Astley Hall in Chorley, but we've got the centralizations perfectly spot on there. Another big old door. But it doesn't have to be big old doors. It can be shutters like here, this lifeboat doorway. It makes a nice little square around Willow's head there. And it's just, you know, that box is framing her. And can you see how you have that contrast as well? Unlike that one where you had the black dog and that kind of black background with the tree sticks, she's white, so she's bright and yellow, whereas the backgrounds are more white. I mean, technically grey there if you're going to use a colour picker, but to our eyes it's white, and the contrast between them is nice. Same here with this metal shutter in Manchester, and I've made that framing pop by putting a flash here behind the dog and then pointing that at the rivets, so that really makes them separate, because this could potentially have gone too dark like that previous shot, because he's got quite dark ears. And if you look over here, this is the more like the natural light, and you can see I've stopped down, and if I just shot it like that with no flash in there at all, then the whole thing would just be quite flat and it would blend into it, so you need that bit of separation. Trees are a good one as well. Lots of trees in nature. Yeah, Ross Campbell, Pet Photography, says, that's gorgeous. I'm always looking at doorways in my city. Which city are you in, Ross? I love doorways as well. I love a little bit of an urban look. And also, yeah, also the natural look. Trees are great here. We've got tall, towering trees that are just poking up around him here. Now, again, it doesn't matter if they're not going all the way around. That frame is kind of to the side, and it's almost like just curving around here, and creating that little bit of framing in the sky actually as well. That blue you can almost cut out as a little star around him there. More trees here in a silhouette. The white behind you might think is a sky, but it's actually a lake or a reservoir actually. And it was going very, very dusk at that point, but that water was reflecting the light, so it was a great opportunity to do the silhouette. And these trees were then making the framing. You've got to be careful that they're not crossing over or interfering with the subject, as we were saying before. I actually had to Photoshop some of these out because there wasn't really as much space as I wanted, but I could see, you know, you've got this big chunk of framing just around here. Window frames are a great one as well if you're doing urban shots. This is I think it's a bar that they're stood behind. So I had Django and Ginny stood on a table in the old market in Preston City Centre, and then I was using the framing of the window of the bar directly behind them as that little bit of interest that just kind of says, yes, this is the picture and these are the subjects that you're looking at. Ross says he's at northeast of Scotland in Aberdeen. Oh, how lovely! I love Scotland so much. I mean, I'm an absolute sucker for the Highlands right up there. Gairloch Way, oh, all those mountains, absolutely delicious. But you're very lucky living up there. I bet it's quite cold right now. If any of you have ever been to Scotland, you'll know it's chilly at this time of year. Brrr. And so we're talking about window frames. Here we've got window frames that are active and currently being used in the city. You've got all that lovely bokeh behind, but it doesn't have to be one that's being lived in. This is actually ruins, stable ruins. Well, again, we shot just the other week, and we climbed into the stable and sort of looked through the side of where the windows were. All the glass and whatever used to be there has all fallen out, but it just creates this really nice frame. And I pulled back for a couple of shots as well because there was another frame. You can just see along the very edge just here. There's a second frame here, and I have composited that together so that if I wanted to do a more pulled out shot, I've got almost like a double frame. Well, that's typical Scotsman, isn't it? So Ross, our Scotsman, says that it's cold for some, but I wear shorts all year round. Oh my word. Do you know what? I'm an English girl, but I hate the cold. Even though I live in northwest of England, I'm constantly trying to have the heating on. In fact, in here, I have it like a sauna. I have a fan heater on because Michael doesn't like the heating quite as hot as I do. So I just make my room super hot, get nice and cozy. I have thermals on under here. Yeah, bit of a thermal, see, and I've got my woolly jumper. Well, polyester wool, but yeah, nice cozy jumper. So I'm not as tough as you, clearly. Holly Dyer Photography says, I'd love to know how you shoot and edit epic silhouette shots. Since you always ask for Tip Tuesday ideas, do you know what? I think that would be a really good vlog idea, Holly. Thank you for that, because people have mentioned that to me before. You guys have said you'd like to know about the silhouette shot, and it's super, super simple. But rather than just telling you, here, I would really like to go out and show you. So I have that on my list, and I'm going to mark down that you suggested that as well. Thank you, Holly, because, yeah, I think that'd be a fun one to demonstrate in a little how-to video. Pillars in architecture are fantastic as well. This photograph is from my recent vlog. It's a puppy, like a puppy session. I've lost my words. It's a puppy session that we've recorded from start to finish. I'm showing you how the shots were developed, my thought process throughout them, etc. And this particular shot you'll see in the video, I asked the pup parents to walk away. So that's what he's looking at. And then I've crouched down just in front of these huge pillars and used them just to frame. And can you see how that's got a very shallow depth of field? So it creates a nice, soft, dreamy look around. It's not interfering or distracting. Like, do you remember that picture earlier it was actually Manchester with that archway where the dogs were a little bit small in the frame, and everything was too in focus as well, because A, didn't have a shallow enough depth of field, and they weren't really close enough to the camera relative to that either. So they kind of all blended into one, but here there's like some really beautiful separation. More pillars. So, I mean, this is kind of using the side of the building, but we have got some pillars over here. So I'm saying it's pillars, but it's also using this chunk of the building here to frame the dog. So using those architectural structures and also the light, because we've got this lighter bit here that's just creating a little highlight around him. Using structures in the city as well is really cool. You know, when I think that urban structures are the best to work with, to be honest. Like, if you go to a city, there's shapes everywhere, and you can get very overwhelmed with all the choices because there's so many possible things you do. But if you really try and drill down and look at, well, what is this small area of this big scene? What can I use? And the small area that we're using here is actually of a lamb banana. So the lamb banana is like an art installation in Liverpool City, well, Liverpool Docks actually. It's on Liverpool Royal Albert Docks, to be precise. And they're shaped exactly like these little things just here, you can see, just above the dog's head there. And they are a lamb banana. I'm not really sure why, a lamb and a banana, but there's a whole row of them. They're very colourful and they look fabulous. And the legs act as a great little arch for a small dog there. So he sat beneath one of them, and then I'm stepped back and then using another one to create that shallow depth of field. And that also stops this being too distracting. Like, if it didn't have this bit in the foreground creating that softness around the dog, then this would potentially be quite distracting, because it would all just be in focus and it wouldn't be framing the subject as much as drawing your eye away from the subject, as we discussed before. Ross Campbell for Pet Photography says, my partner's the same. So you're the one that makes the house cold, girl. I feel for your partner. That's me. Yeah, the silhouette vlog sounds awesome too. Right, I'm gonna have to make that for you guys then, aren't I? Cool. Silhouette vlog coming up. I'm gonna be doing one of these vlogs for you every single month, one a month. That's my New Year's resolution. I'm gonna stick to it, holding myself accountable. I'm excited. I really enjoyed making that last one for you. I think they can only get better. Urban structures again here. This is on Southport Pier, and there's this gorgeous it's like a light stand, I think. I don't know exactly what it is, but it almost acts like a little crown over the dog there, and you can see there's a whole row of them. You can do really cool things on like a telephoto lens in this structure as well, zooming in, and it compresses all of these arches together and creates another oval over the dog's head. Paths are great, and especially at this time of year when everything's dead and grey, you want to look for these highlighted areas here. So there's this light path, which is just creating that little bit of a triangle around the little doggy down here and his human. And again here, the light path with all the wind, that's drawing the viewer's eye as well. Like, can you see this path here is drawing the viewer's eye along this path, creating that interest, and then right down here, and you can see this connection between them. So it's just really saying, look, here is where I want you to look. Michael says, I'm sure that banana and lamb loved each other. Well, yeah, they must have done, because how did these lamb bananas come to be? Arches are great. They're kind of like doorways, but missing the door, I guess. And Here we've got that gorgeous bright sky behind, the dark archway, and then we've lit Poppy so that she just pops out. And yeah, you've got her kind of highlighted here. And again in the reflection as well, she's got that arch around her. This was down in Cornwall when we went on holiday earlier. Well, it's not earlier this year, it's last year now. We're in 2022. Another arch here is Mao Cop Castle. So we've got little cricks here up on the stone, and then I'm shooting up and framing him so that he's just perfectly centralized within that arch. Again, being careful that his ear's not going too close. There's lots of spacing around so that he has space to breathe. It's almost like when you're using framing within the shot, you know, you have your framing in your shot generally in your composition. That's like a frame within your actual photo frame. The Pont du Gard in France, a very spectacular version of an arch. Huge thing. I think that is the oldest in existence. I know it has some sort of importance. Anyway, it was very, very beautiful. Holly Dyer Photography says, when you have a cool structure involved in an image, how do you decide whether to have it in or out of focus? I feel like I always shoot wide open, but I want to start including interesting textures. That is a good question, because it is very easy to create composition by keeping everything in focus. But I know exactly what you mean about wanting to have interest. I'm very much in that way of thinking, that I like kind of the landscape and essentially including the dog in the landscape, like we have here, this structure. I don't know what aperture I was at here. I would say experimenting is the best way, and really you want to think about how busy the background is. So you know, your reason for using a very shallow depth of field would be that, well, I'm using this, you know, this structure or whatever is to frame, but there's lots of other stuff going on, like with that one. If we just skip to this one of the lamb banana again, so here, this is very busy, it's very bright, it's very bold, and if I just had that, then that would distract away from my subject. But by adding in this softer bit here, it's taking away that distraction a little bit. So I think the best way for you to decide for yourself what works and what doesn't for you is to do one where the subject's in focus and one where the subject's out. And then if you're thinking, well, I really want to get this in focus, but it's not working, try switching up your composition. Try cutting out some of the clutter, come in a little bit closer, like physically move yourself in a bit closer. And then you'll be able to include a little bit more of that detail. Foliage is a lovely way to create some nice natural framing. I actually held this up in front of my camera, but there was lots of these ferns growing around. You could crouch down behind grasses, flowers, leaves, trees, whatever. And this, I held up the ferns in front of my camera so that they were exactly in the right spot. You know, I really wanted to have them in a specific point here. And that's I think that's a really fun way. I mean, also, it doesn't have to go all the way around. Like I said before, I'll oftentimes just get some twigs or branches or whatever, and I'll hold them out so they kind of fan out, one on that side and one on that side towards my camera, and then I'll shoot down the middle, and it just creates this nice shallow depth of field at the bottom and just kind of frames the bottom of the photo. Look at that little nose! Look, you just want to boop it. Another example of foliage framing for you there, and not as typically, or less typically, just the nose as opposed to the whole face. Michael says, I like things just a little soft if you can use tone or colour to get separation instead. Yeah, okay, that was an answer to Holly's question. And Holly says, thank you, awesome. I think it certainly helps how you use light for extra separation. I need a glamorous assistant like yours. Oh, there is no glamour in the assisting that Michael does for me. His nails are constantly getting chipped, his hands are freezing cold, arms falling off from holding the leaves. It's a tough job, but he does a good job. Natural rock formations are a wonderful way to encapsulate your subject as well. This is Brimham Rocks over in Yorkshire. These huge sandstone, I don't know, they look like man-made. I don't know what to describe them as. They look like a monument or something, but they are actually formed by the wind whipping around the sides and in between the rocks and just wearing down the sandstone. And I've just placed Poppy just down here. So again, showing that this picture shows that the subject doesn't have to be big in the frame. They can be quite small. but that's just really highlighting where she is just down here. And you know what? If you can't see anything, or if you just fancy being a little bit different, bring something with you to frame your subject, like a lens ball. You can also use, like I've been using scarves recently for the scarf project. You could use something you have at home, something you want to shoot through. Experiment, try different things that you can hold in front of your camera or put in front of your camera. Maybe something that you can, like these are sticks that were actually like crisscrossing, and you could just shoot through those instead of having the lens ball. You could put those down and shoot through those as well. Take some, if you see some sticks when you're out and about, take them to your next shoot, and you can pop them down and use those to frame your subject. Nadia's Pet Photography says, hello from cold Kazakhstan. Oh, hello, Kazakhstan. I enjoy your photography very much. Thank you for sharing your beautiful work with us. Very inspiring. Oh, isn't that lovely? Thank you so much. Thank you for popping on here. I always thought Kazakhstan was a very warm country, so you've educated me on geography a little bit there. I guess it's kind of north though, isn't it? North of the east. Super. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, all of you, for joining me today. I hope you found that useful. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments now. We can do a little Q&A. We have kind of covered quite a few of the questions as we've gone through. But if there's anything else that you want to run by me, you have the opportunity to do it now. Wrong, says Nadia's Pet Photography. So yeah, it's clearly very cold over there. Graphics says, I ordered a lens ball today. Your fault. Oh, sorry about that. You'll thank me for it, I'm sure. They're really good fun. And this one I said on the last live that I did with you guys, I need to dig that out and start shooting with it again, because I had a really fun run with it when I first got it, and then I think I just put it away and forgot to get it out again. So digging out this picture for you guys has made me remember as well. So, we're influencing each other, Suzanne. Holly Dyer Photography says, my daughter is watching this and asks if I'm a unicorn. Yes, I am a unicorn. Well, I'm a cat, actually. Look, I have cat ears. I actually have about 30 of these pairs of ears. I have a rather big collection of them. One for every day of the month. But yeah, I'm quite happy to pass as a unicorn. I love pastel, love anything colourful. Hello, Holly's daughter. Thank you for watching this. Pop in the comments anything you'd like me to cover in the future, anything you're really struggling with, any pain points. I'm going to be doing some editing tutorials with you soon, so if there's something that you struggle with, particularly in Lightroom or Photoshop, let me know and I'll do a little video for you. I love editing with you guys, and now we're on this horizontal format. You'll be able to see everything so much clearer. You can now watch last week's live on the replay, and that is, oh my god, I've forgotten what it was about. And that's about getting variety in your photo sessions. Couldn't even remember what I did last week. Brain drew a blank. But yeah, that's there now. So if you haven't watched that already, go and check that out now. Graphicus says, when are you finally writing all your knowledge down? I would love to buy that book. She has been nagging me for ages to write a book. Oh, bless you. And I really appreciate that you even sent me a layout and you're like, come on, Kat, write this book. I really want a book. Well, do you know what? I need a book deal. Come on, publishers, reach out to me. Maybe we can make that happen. The Perfect Fit NJ says, I love joining you every week. You're a hang. I love that you come and hang out with me every week. Thank you. Honestly, it would not be the same if you weren't here. I love it when you guys chat to me in here, and I really, really appreciate you being here. So, yay, I'm glad you like being here as well. Nadia's Pet Photography says, interested in how you use off-camera light in your shoots, positioning, light modifiers, etc. Oh, I have a video that has been about a year in the making, and that is going to be launched this year for sure this year, soon, but hopefully very soon. But in the meantime, I do actually have a video which is on my Instagram account at Catstock Photography. That is, if you scroll down through my videos, then you'll see one on lighting. I'm not sure if that one actually has a title on the cover, because Instagram took the ones you used to write in, and I didn't put one physically on the thumbnail. But if you scroll down, you'll see me in, funnily enough, I'm in some overalls like these blue ones, and there's a an octo box behind me, and I think I'm like going, wah! I think I might have Poppy in my arm as well. Have a look for that. Anyway, it was let me think. I think it was last May time-ish that I filmed that one. So have a little scroll through and you can watch that one now. It's about using off-camera flash on your own with no assistant. So even though I do work with an assistant, I used to shoot without Michael, so I made a little video to show how I would do that. You're a good hang, says the perfect fit NJ. Oh, I love you, thank you. Dolly dreams, would you ever start up photography workshops? Dolly's little human sibling would love to do one. Yes, absolutely. We are doing workshops. We're going to America in April and we're holding a workshop there. We are looking at doing a UK workshop soon as well. So if you go over to catsdog.co.uk and go on the tab on the left hand side that says workshops, fill in your details whether you're interested in the UK or the US workshops. We did do a workshop just before, well, a couple of workshops just before the pandemic as well. So if you want to see the behind the scenes of that, have a look on my YouTube channel and there's a video there, the very first Cats Dog workshops, and you can have a little peek about what that will look like when we do one next. Ross Campbell, pet photography, says, always good fun. I really need to get my wide angle out for more experimenting. I'm a sucker for a wide angle. As we were saying before, I love taking in the whole scene. I love the detail, but you have got to be super, super careful that your composition, your framing is spot on, because if you've got a very busy background, then that can just distract from the subject. So be super, super aware and conscious of that. Amy Finn Photography says, do you have any advice on becoming more confident in front of the camera? Yeah, practice. Practice. You know, I've been doing these lives with you guys now for 2 years. And before I used to go live, I used to shit myself. Honestly, I was sweating. It's like, oh, why am I doing this? I'm going live. And this is just with my little phone. You know, I've got like 3 screens in front of me now. But now I get really excited to go live with you. And that's only happened by practice. And when I started it, I've been thinking about doing it, but it was when the pandemic started and basically all life went on hold, didn't it? So I thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to do a weekly Tip Tuesday. The idea was to give people advice on how they could get better pictures of their dogs at home while they were just hanging and twiddling our thumbs. And that was how it started, and I committed to doing that every single week. So if you want to get more confident, give yourself some accountability to do some sort of video content at a regular interval, something that's achievable. Back in 2018, I promised myself, my New Year's resolution, in fact, was that I was going to do a story every single day, 5 days a week, talking to the camera, filming what I was doing, or, you know, using my voice basically. And if you look back on my highlights, you know, go right back to some of the earlier ones when my hair was a different colour, I'm not quite as confident in front of the camera, but that only changed very slowly over doing it every single day, and having that New Year's resolution and that accountability made me do it. And then I really wanted to start doing YouTube videos, and I said last year I'm going to do YouTube. I'm going to do a YouTube video every single week. But I think it was too much, you know, it wasn't an achievable target. So, you know, instead of being like, well, I can't do one a week, I'll just do one a month, I just didn't do any. So that's why this year I've promised one a month, because that is definitely achievable. And hey, we're off to a good start. There's one out there already. Amy says, wow, you never looked nervous. You're so good. Winging it. Honestly, when I first started going live, I was like, oh my God, I'm live. But yeah, I guess it's just experience. It's like when you're learning to shoot. You know, at first, when you first do a live client shoot, you're like, oh my God, like, am I doing this right? But I mean, the client doesn't know. They just think, oh wow, they know what they're doing with the camera, and you know, you're the expert, so they don't really think about it. You know, we think about ourselves more than other people think about us. So the trick is to just feel the fear and do it anyway. And then the more you do it, then that fear just evaporates and becomes normal. Graphicism said, never had the feeling you weren't confident. Well, I mean, I felt confident in what I was doing, but I was nervous going, like those kind of like pre-flight jitters, like when you're going on stage or something. I used to do amateur dramatics, funnily enough. And before I used to go on stage, I'd be there on the side like, why am I doing this? And I think that's a similar kind of thing. But, I'm glad. Amy from Photography says, do you explain to your clients that you'll be doing behind the scenes on shoots? I think by now they already know when they rock up, because I do a story of all my shoots, and they'll have seen the highlight reels as well, the story highlights, sorry. I think they kind of already know, but I do usually say, I'm going to vlog this session, and they're like, oh yeah, cool. And we ask them as well before the session what their Instagram handle is, so that I can tag them in it. But yeah, I think it's a good idea to just give them a heads up that that's what you're going to do. And I've never had anyone object. I think we live in a world now where everyone's like, Instagram anyway. I've always been like that, I've always been like, snap, taking a gazillion pictures. It's just now massively globally encouraged. So like, great, really good excuse to do it. So many snapperoos on my phone. I have got a call with my family in Germany. I haven't seen them for about 2 years. Well, yeah, 2 years, because of the pandemic. We usually see them once or twice a year. But sadly, we've not been able to. So I'm going to Skype with them tonight. I'm sure my 2 nieces will have shot up since I last saw them. So I'm going to scooch off and have some famo time. Lovely. Thank you very much, says Amy Finn Photography. We'll keep practicing. Yup, that's the ticket. Practice makes perfect. Just over time. Keep at it. Thank you for joining me on this week's Tip Tuesday, my lovelies. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. If you did, please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss the next video. We'll be coming to you next week with another tip video, and this time I'll be talking about how to present photographs to your client, or what should you present to your client. If you're a professional photographer in any field, it doesn't just have to be dog photography, then how should you show them those initial pictures? How should you show them to your client? I actually had someone up here earlier. Well, I had someone up here yesterday, in fact, and she was saying, I showed her my catalogue, and she was saying, I can't get over how you present your pictures back to your client because they're only half finished. And I always say to my clients before they see their pictures that this isn't the finished article. I select the best of each setup, I present those to you, and then I'll finish them off after. So I'm going to be going through some of my photographs, how they start out when I actually take them, and what I present to the client, and then what they look like once the client actually receives them. In the meantime, you can watch last week's In the meantime, you can watch last week's Tip Tuesday video if you haven't already. That's just here, and that's about how to get more variety in your photo sessions. Have a super rest of week. Be kind to each other, and I'll see you next time for next week's Tip Tuesday. Bye.